Hi, and thanks for hitting the snooze button. My name's Neil Headley. I was prepared to write off a literal lifelong battle with insomnia to just being part of the gig for doing more than 30 years of television and radio in the mornings. Well, when I dug a little bit deeper, it turned out I had a lot more to learn. So, in this series, we're going to fix your sleep by figuring out why mine is so horribly broken, and maybe we can stumble upon some answers together. We're going to get some help this week from a couple of friends. One, a Broadway star who played Carole King in Beautiful, the Carole King musical. We're going to talk to Chilina Kennedy in just a little while and find out how she possibly could fall asleep the night before her big Broadway opening when, for all she knew, Carole King was going to be in the audience. We'll get into that. Michael Grandner, Dr. Michael Grandner from the University of Arizona will be here as well to kind of dissect Chilina's sleep hack and talk about whether or not it's based on sound scientific principles, and we'll dig into that a little bit as well. Plenty to come. We'll give you a preview of next week's episode as well, but first, let's get to this week's Editorial. The Editorial this week has no script. Last week's did. In fact, if you look really closely at the video for last week's Editorial, you'll be able to see where my eyes every once in a while dart down to the teleprompter so that I don't lose track of where I am. There's no script this week because, frankly, the subject matter has me so enraged that I think I can just go off the cuff and be able to form some coherent sentences on this. It's an open letter. Don't worry, it's not going to be one of those Remember when open letters were a thing? And if you hadn't put out an open letter in sometime in the last 12 hours, you were obviously missing the social media boat. Everybody and their uncle was sending an open letter to somebody. Thankfully, open letters went away, but I'm going to bring them back for this week for this purpose. Dear media, stop lying to people about sleep. Stop writing about sleep. Stop talking about sleep unless you've actually done some research and kind of have half of a clue what you're talking about, because the way that you're writing about it and covering it right now is quite possibly putting people in danger. I got a note from, and either danger or just plain misleading people in the name of having people click on your affiliate link and maybe stuffing a couple of extra bucks in your company's pocket. Look, I got a note from a tech website that I used to have a great deal of respect for, but when it comes to the sleep world, respect is a very slippery slope for me, and you can lose my respect like that. And so what they did was they sent me a link with their guy who writes a column on how to save money on stuff, and he scans the web for things that are on sale and really cool bargains, and it's a really great column. Until the week came up where he promoted a white noise machine that was on sale, a great white noise machine that would guarantee me a great night's sleep. Dude, go read the research on white noise machines before you guarantee me a great night's sleep just because you want to put it in your column. If there was one thing out there in the world that would guarantee people a good night's sleep, don't you think we would have eradicated insomnia by now? And yet a third of the people on the planet have sleep disorders or chronic sleep problems. So maybe that guarantee is a little bit flimsy, and maybe you should think about how you write your column. I corrected somebody on Twitter this week. If you follow us on Twitter, the handle, Get Your Snooze On, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I would say Instagram, but our Instagram game is so weak. We need to find and maybe hire a person to do our Instagram stuff for us. Get in touch, feedback@thesnoozebutton.com if you think you can help us with our Instagram stuff. But we had to correct some people a couple of times on our Twitter feed last week. One of them was, and forgive me if I get this wrong, but the Brisbane Times, I think, jumps out at me because they had posted a piece about an organization, a group of people that call themselves the 5:30 Club. And they get up early and they get together at 5:30 and they get a bunch of stuff done before the sun's even up, and they feel like it contributes to having a really productive day. Nowhere in the article does it discuss their sleep habits. It doesn't talk about what time these people go to sleep in order to be able to get up and function properly at 5:30. But the headline on the article, shun sleep for better performance. Shun sleep? Wait a minute. Should I introduce you to my friend, Dr. Adrian Owen, who was on the first episode, not only the first episode of season 2, but also our first guest in season 1, who did a massive study that talks about how people who shun sleep take a performance hit in their cognitive performance and are performing at the same level as someone whose brain is 10 years older than theirs. Come on, if we're going to write about sleep, if we're going to talk about sleep, if we're going to do all these different things about sleep, if you're not going to research every single aspect of it and talk to an expert about it, please look some things up. Google some things. Somebody else posted a great article, and it had the potential to be a great article about a terrific study that they didn't bother linking to so that we could go and look at the study ourselves and see if the data made sense. The data matters. And it was one of those things where I thought that by waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning for 30 years as I did, I thought I knew a little bit of stuff about sleep until I started doing this show and talking to experts. And if you've been with the show for any length of time, you know that every single week we're talking to the leading experts on sleep and the leading researchers from all over the world. I had no idea how little I knew about sleep until I started paying attention to people who actually do. And it changed everything about the way I talk about sleep. It changed everything about the way I relate to other people, the importance of sleep. So come on, media. Let's stop phoning it in. Let's give a rat's ass and get the science part right before we start doing clickbait headlines and affiliate links to white noise machines, okay? Okay, so, Chilina Kennedy, you are going to get the very same first question that everybody who's ever been on the show and everybody who ever has been or will be on the show will always get, and it goes like this. How did you sleep last night?
I slept very well last night.
Ooh. What's very well for you look like?
Very well for me means that I don't fall asleep in front of a screen or with any device. I fall asleep without any kind of anxiety. I don't worry about falling asleep. I just fall asleep naturally, and I get up when my body is ready to get up. So that means without an alarm.
That's textbook. Okay, well, thanks for coming. We're done here. No, I got nothing left to ask you about. Okay, so we're going to get into what happens on nights maybe when that doesn't crop up for you, but we got some catching up to do because I haven't seen you at least since before the pandemic started. In fact, I think the last time I saw you, we were having a conversation about what was next on your plate after being Carole King for such a very long time in Beautiful, the Carole King musical. So give me the update on the update, and then for everybody else as well, what are you working on?
You're so sweet. Well, all the things I was working on, all those projects were either canceled or postponed. So, you know, I think it's okay for me to say I was supposed to be doing Les Mis in Toronto all summer, last summer, which would have been fantastic. There was a bunch of other things I was working on, an off-Broadway show that was supposed to be happening. Anyway, and it's okay. Everybody lost so many things during this time. I think it's just a matter of like, okay, what can we make out of this time? Fortunately, I've got a theater company, a not-for-profit theater company in Toronto called Eclipse Theater Company. So we are very, very busy working on things, trying to find opportunities for people right now because there's not a lot of work to go around. So we're trying to create that work or be part of creating that work. I've also written a show. I've written a musical called Call It Love with a wonderful writer named Eric Holmes, who's one of the writers on The Good Fight. He's an American writer, so the two of us have teamed up and we're working on a show. And there's a lot of creative projects. You know, I did a symphony gig, and I've done a few filmed projects. So it's been fun. It's been busy, and thank goodness it's been busy. I feel very, very lucky. And I think part of it is just that artists now need to be thinking outside the box, and whether or not it brings money in, I think just being creatively fulfilled is important right now.
Every time I see one of those videos pop up where it's a bunch of actors, actresses, singers, etc., doing some kind of amazing split screen Zoom thing that they've all put together remotely, I always sit there glued to it to see where's Chilina. Oh, there she is. And you're always in there somewhere, which is always fun to do and fun to look at. Talk to me about that whole community, because you talk about how everybody lost something, and you and I are having a conversation. It's the morning after President Biden announced that everybody who wants a vaccination is going to be able to, get in line starting May the 1st. And he put out sort of a line in the sand last night that said, we're hoping to, by the 4th of July, you'll be able to have the cookout with your family and maybe even your extended family again. So, people are circling those dates on the calendar. So for people who do what you do for a living, talk to me about what this last year plus has been like the last time you were on a stage. Did you know that night that it was going to be the last time you were on a stage for a while?
No, I had no idea. And ironically, I took a little bit of time between the band's visit and Les Mis so that I could spend time at home with my son. I was like, this will be a great little break. I'll take a couple months. And then the pandemic hit. So, I've been fortunate enough to there's a thing that Stratford is doing called Up Close and Musical. And so we were able to go in and be filmed on the actual festival stage by a film crew. And of course, everybody was distanced and it was all very safe. But I started weeping as soon as I walked into the building and I walked up the stairs. I mean, I get emotional just talking about it. But being on an actual stage and singing in an actual theater, I think I'd forgotten how much I missed it. I think I'd forgotten, or maybe I'd never realized how much it meant to me. It's different than doing it on screen or doing it in the park or doing it in someone's living room. I mean, it's those stages were built for the purposes of people gathering and breathing together and having an audience and having a shared communal experience. So it's very special and nothing can replace it. And it's funny, somebody in New York said, I probably should remember who said this, but anyway, there is a word for filming art and putting it on the screen, and it's called film and TV. So the fact that as theater we're trying to do it, on Zoom is a little bit bizarre, and it's good. It's a good placement holder until it comes back.
It was interesting.
Can't replace.
It was interesting when Lin-Manuel Miranda's production showed up on whatever streaming service that was of Hamilton, because I think for a lot of people that made everybody sit back and go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we can do stuff like this after all. But then I didn't see a whole ton of big productions come out after Hamilton did, and what I forget, was it Disney Plus or whatever streaming service that showed up on. But what I did take heart in, and I almost got choked up, I watched some video of the first night in Melbourne, Australia, that Come From Away was back on stage, and Come From Away was kind of the first one. And got all choked up watching them because...
I did too!
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, it meant something obviously totally different for you than it meant for me. So talk to me about the impact for you.
Well, it was what I sort of described before. It was just that, if we're careful, I mean, it's a few different things. It's that I don't think we realize how precious things are, or time is, or experiences are, until we lose them. I mean, and those of us who have kids, we know how fast time goes by because we see it in our children, right? So, but it's like, people keep posting pictures of had I known, this time a year ago, this is my last time on the deck, or, the last time singing this song. I just think we are learning how to appreciate things on a much deeper level now. So I think, seeing the first time that it comes back is obviously going to be very moving for so many different reasons.
Is performing for you, because I've talked to people, mostly stand-up comics or musicians, players, drummers, whatever, who talk about performing sometimes being this muscle that you have to find a way to, even if you're not on stage for a while, that you have to find ways to keep that muscle finely tuned. Are you one of those people? And if you are, what are you doing?
Yeah, I do have to keep it finely tuned. And there's so many muscles, right? The vocal muscle, the acting muscle, just even the confidence muscle. Remembering, I know how to do this. I know how to walk into a room. I know how to trust myself. I know how to trust my instincts. Those things you need to keep reminding yourself that you know how to do that, so that you can allow your artistry to be at the forefront of your experience, not your voice that's analyzing what you're doing. So. I'm trying to sing as much as possible. I've got a concert coming up for the Regent on the 20th. So I'm trying to sing every day. I'm also trying to stay inspired. So watching things, watching online concerts, watching whatever I can get my hands on, just to remind myself of the world and this used to be my everyday.
Is there something positive that you've taken away from all of this while all this COVID has been going on?
So many things. Time with my child. Time to
and that's
reevaluate.
Henry's going to be what, like 7 this summer, right?
In September, yeah, he'll be 7. So he's 6 right now, and he's, I also learn a lot from the kids. Like these kids are going through so much right now, and I'm just continually inspired by their attitudes and how resilient they are, and how they don't complain about the stuff that adults are complaining about half the time. And I mean, we're potted with 2 other families, and so there's these 3 only children, and all of the other parents are actors as well, and the kids are doing online school together, so we feel it's safer than sending them to school, but they also get the socialization of being together. So the time that we've been able to spend together, and the time that I've been able to really be hands-on with his education and his day-to-day, that's been time I can never get back. And the time I've had in my garden, or I spent the last 5 years in New York, and so it's fun to be able to be in my home again and planting vegetables and saying hi to my neighbors and taking walks around the river. The thing, you can't put a price on those things. And I think I've also had time to reevaluate not only everything our culture is going through, and the political things, and the systemic issues that are going on. We've had time to dig into those things, and also to reflect on what we need in life. Do I need as much of a salary as I thought I did, or can I actually live comfortably and happily on something less than that, provided I have all of these other things that fill me spiritually and emotionally,
right, because your definition of happy changes, I think, for a lot of people when it was one of the interesting things that I've been hearing talk about lately when people talk about the mental health impact of all of this, where even just the most basic of things that we used to rely on to sort of prop us up, the friend that we could get together with when we were down, or any of those kind of things, those are all gone. And all the fun things for recreation that we used to do in groups of people, those have been gone for ages. And so we've all been put into this weird place where we have to figure out how to pivot. And a lot of us were barely figuring it out to begin with when we had a whole ton of people around us, never mind when all that's been stripped away. So I'm excited for when it's all over. I'm excited when we can go back out and see live entertainment again, and when we can see theater again, and all those different kinds of things, even when we can just go and sit around a table with friends. The pre-show ritual, which obviously is completely different for the people on stage than it is for the people in the chairs. But, there is that pre-show thing of pick which restaurant you're going to go to, and you all get there about an hour and a half before curtain, and you sit and laugh and do all the stuff that it's part of the show. It's a whole part of that experience. It's even that's gone. I would even be happy just to be able to sit around a table with people again. So hopefully we get there soon.
And I think when we do go back, we're not going back so much as we're going to move forward with all of these deeper appreciations for something as simple as just sitting across from somebody that you love. Because it's, I don't think we realize how deeply this has affected every single one of us. And this pandemic, especially for our industry, the performing arts, has been the biggest leveler. It's just leveled the playing field. And I think we're going to see a lot of generosity moving forward. That we're all in this together. We remind ourselves that we've all been kind of at the same level with not a lot coming in for the last year. And so I think that is going to affect the way we treat each other in the workplace, the way that we share the wealth moving forward. I hope. That's what I'm sensing anyway.
Fingers crossed, yeah. Talk to me about, let's get into the performance side of things. And I'm working my way down a path here, and I think where I'm going to go eventually. But talk to me about, because I want to go back to Beautiful for a second, because it's one of a million things. If you haven't, if Beautiful was the first time you paid attention to who Chilina was, and I'm sure that by virtue of being on a stage in New York, there were people who were discovering you for the first time, probably tons of them. But you've got this great resume. But I want to talk about the Carole King musical in particular, because I want to get to the bottom of, is it harder to play as an actor a fictitious character, or harder to play a person who actually exists?
This is a great question. I find it more difficult to play somebody who actually exists, especially somebody who's as loved and idolized as Carole King. You've got people all over the world, but especially in the United States, who they know her music inside and out. I mean, they know who she is, they know the sound of her voice, they know the spirit of her and her songwriting in such an intimate way. And that album, Tapestry, was a huge part of people's lives. Like, the stories I would hear at the stage door, like, oh, this is the song that I listened to when, my best friend and I were taking a road trip across the state, or I wore out 2 copies of the record, and so I had to buy a third one, or, would you sign this third one that I have? It was just amazing. So, yes, the pressure that goes along with that, not just from other people or, the outside world, but from myself. I mean, I was a huge Carole King fan. I am a huge Carole King fan, and I don't think I realized what a big fan I was until I started digging into how many of the songs that I loved she actually wrote, let alone performed. So there is a ton of pressure, and and I wanted to do her justice. Like, she's an incredibly glass half full, positive, generous person, and so I just thought, oh gosh, if I can embody even a portion of who she was, I'll be doing a good job. So,
well, it's interesting you bring up the how many she wrote versus how many she performed, right? Because she's already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a writer, and now there's Carole King going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a performer. So there is that whole appreciating the other side of her catalog thing that's very present for people. So I'm told, and I think it's you that told me this actually years ago, that Carole had a habit of periodically showing up in the audience unannounced at various... Did you have that experience?
I did. Yeah, I figured I almost had a heart attack because she emailed me before my first, or after my first performance, I believe. I think I started previews. And so I looked at my email, and there was an email from Carole Dash. And I was like, oh, I don't have any friends named Carole. Oh my God, it's Carole King. And she said, dear Miss, dear Chilina, I hear you're doing great in the show. I'm going to come and see you. Do you want to know when I'm coming? And I wrote back, dear Miss King, please do not tell me when you're coming, because I will literally fall over. I would be too nervous. So she wrote back and she laughed. She was like, okay, I'll come and see us at a time TBD, but it'll be sometime in April or whatever. So I knew she was coming at some point that month, but I didn't know when exactly. And there was a big joke in the cast that, like, every time there was a commotion in the audience, they'd be like, it's Carole, she's here. And I would, I'd get all nervous and flip out.
Didn't want to know in advance, though.
No, I did not want to know in advance, just because I think, it just took me out of the moment. There's already so much pressure, and, the pressure of the night, or however you're feeling that day, or whatever you might be going through, that you just want to have all of the energy possible to just focus on the work. Just like outside distractions are not helpful. Like, who might be in the audience? Like, we used to have people showing up all the time, like Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney came to see the show, and so, like, knowing he's out there is going to affect me. And so I think, anytime there was any celebrity in the audience, I would just say, please don't let me know. I just want to do my show. So anyway, she shows up, and she's in a wig and glasses, and the producers introduce her as one of their grandmothers or something, and then she walked in, and, like, the wig comes off and the glasses go off, and it's like, it's Carole. And it was one of the most exciting moments. It was just such a fun way, to meet her.
So taking you out of the moment and all the additional pressure that would have come from just knowing that she was going to be there, I want to go back to the night before your opening night as Carole King, at least on Broadway. Talk to me about that night. I mean, you're on stage. You are the star of what is one of the biggest shows in the world on Broadway tomorrow night. So tonight is the night before that night. How on earth did you possibly fall asleep that night?
That's a very good question. So the producers were kind to me, and they eased me into the show. So my opening night was not something I advertised to my family and friends. Like, I didn't want a huge group of people there. And what they actually gave me was a matinee to start, which felt like a really kind way to ease me into the run. So it wasn't like a big Saturday night. And they did this specifically, to make it as easy a transition as possible. They also, because Jessica Keenan Wynn was also going into the show with Cynthia, so what they did was they allowed me to open first, and then they allowed her to open afterwards, so that we weren't both doing it on the same night. So there was a lot of calm on the stage with me on that matinee performance. And then, as a result, I was able to be really grounded and calm for Jessica when she made her debut. So I think the night before the performance, obviously I was battling nerves. And for me, being in the present moment helps me enormously. I mean, it helps me with my acting. It also helps me to sleep or to get over whatever I'm getting over. And I think if I can just remember that I'm here right now and that tomorrow doesn't happen until tomorrow, and worrying about it now isn't going to change anything. I mean, people tell themselves that and it works or it doesn't work, but for me it does work if I really believe it. And so I just keep telling myself that over and over and over again. And I just go through the same routine that I always do. Like, I think if I'd made a big deal about it and, done like a face mask and done a whole different routine, I might not have been able to sleep. But I think because I treated it like just any other night, I think that was helpful for me.
Do you have a thing you do when that doesn't work? Is there a go-to that you fall on when getting grounded and all of that doesn't work for you?
Yes, and I'm glad you're asking me, because when I was a kid, I used to have a really hard time sleeping. And I used this trick on the kids, because they often do sleepovers, and one of the kids actually has trouble falling asleep. And, sometimes for her or for me, it used to be noise or worries that I had. And so I'll just, first of all, what I'll do, and I didn't know this when I was a kid, so I couldn't use this as a tool, but now I do, that I won't put any pressure on myself if I can't sleep. Like, I just go, okay, I can't sleep, no problem. Like, easy. Like, my body will fall asleep when it's supposed to fall asleep, and I will do something else. I'll read a book, I'll do something else I'm excited about, or that I'm, not something that energizes me, but something that I like to do. Like, I'll read a book that's not too exciting, but something that I'm interested in,
Sure.
Or I will go through my body and I'll take myself through this journey, which is what I do with the kids. I take them on an adventure, and I'll use this very, very slow, methodic voice, and everything kind of is very, and I'll sort of do these boring descriptions of the path, and you know what I mean, and eventually they were asleep in like 2 seconds. But I'll do that with myself. Like, I'll take myself on a little journey. Like, I'll start outside my cabin, I'll go down the forest trail, and I'll go through my body, and I'll think about relaxing, all the different areas where I'm holding stress, and it just works for me.
Wow, okay. See, now I have to try. I'm building this list. We've talked about this. I'm building this list of different things that people do when they get. Now, your thing of get up and read a book or any of those kind of things, so many of and this may be good to know, this may help validate some things for you. So many of the sleep experts and scientists who study sleep for a living have been on this show before talking about how, the one that jumps to mind in particular is Dr. Linnell Schneeberg. She runs the sleep clinic at Connecticut Children's Medical Center. She's also an associate professor at Yale. So, kind of knows some stuff.
She probably knows what she's talking about.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Talks about how one of the best things that you can do, and it's the thing that she does. She says the best sleep hack there is out there is a book and a book light. And
wow.
Not a book that will excite you, or, a book with car chases or whatever in it, something that you will, something that you're not so invested in that you can't put the book down. It's just, there's even a person who's been a guest on this show before. She has it's this massively popular podcast with millions of listeners called Boring Books for Bedtime. And she will do basically your hack that you used with the kids of, she will take just some random piece of not very interesting literature, like she will read the instructions on a vaporizer or something like, and she'll read them in this very boring delivery, and that's the whole gig, and yet people are riveted to this lady. So what you're doing is working. Is Henry a good sleeper? Has he always been a good sleeper?
He's a fantastic sleeper. Yeah, an amazing
How did that
sleeper.
happen?
I don't know. I mean, I think part of what used to keep me awake as a kid was stress, and so we really try to keep bedtime soothing and relaxed and no pressure. Ever since he was a little kid, it'd be like bath time. We'd turn off any screens long before he gets to bed. Like, I'm finding with the other kids too, like turning off the TV, turning off anything that might, and if they're distracted. Like the other night, I was trying to put them or two of them to bed actually, and all the adults were, talking in the other room. And I said, and one of them said, "Well, the voices are distracting me." And I said, "You know what?" And again, in the voice, when I was a kid, my parents used to have parties because they were military, and I used to love the sound of the voices. It would make me feel safe and secure, and I would just go into like how it would make me feel, and I could see her eyes were getting heavy. And I mean, keeping it relaxed and finding the sort of relaxed, easy, positive way through, especially around bedtime. No arguments at bedtime. I really want to. Yeah, we can do that tomorrow. No problem. just keeping it easy and relaxed.
I unfortunately don't have access to a couple of minutes of you reading something with an incredibly boring delivery, so I'm just going to have to pretend. I'm going to have to hear your voice in my head, although normally I'm accustomed to hearing your voice and you singing songs and whatnot and just being, just completely riveted to whatever it is you're doing, so it may completely defeat the purpose. But now I have marching orders for an experiment going forward. I can't see you on a stage again nearly soon enough, so do me a favor, let me know when that's going to happen, and we'll make sure that we put the word out as best we can too. Chilina, thanks for making room for this.
So sweet. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thanks for being had.
Yeah.
Okay, coming up in just a second, we're going to get to Dr. Michael Grandner from the University of Arizona talking about everything Chilina just said, and we'll get into that in just a second. First, I want to remind you very quickly, and don't worry, this won't take near as long as it did in last week's episode. If you are a person who needs a place to put a website, if you're looking for web hosting, there's a million different ways you can do it wrong. I'm going to make a recommendation to you. Use the same company that we do. We, for all of our projects, for all of the projects that I'm involved in, and I'm involved in about half a dozen different website projects right now. We use the same company for every single thing. It's step one in every website project I get involved in. It's book the web hosting through a company called Nexus. But before you go to Nexus, let me offer you a deal. If you instead go to neilsentme.com, neilsentme.com, and when you sign up there for Nexus and you use the coupon code BUILDNOW, it will save you 25% on your first 3 months. So again, neilsentme.com. You'll be using the same web infrastructure that we count on every single day. And I tell you what, this past week, it came up very, very handy because we were under what they call one of those denial of service attacks where hackers just flood your server with a whole pile of just garbage information trying to block other people from getting to your website. My friends at Nexus had it fixed within about 3 or 4 minutes. They were that good. It's nice to have a company, and they were the ones that let me know that something was wrong. It's great when you have a company behind you that cares about what you're doing. neilsentme.com. Excited to have him back for this episode of The Snooze Button. It's Dr. Michael Grandner, the director of the Sleep and Health Research Program at the University of Arizona, and a person that, if I'm being completely honest, I'm kind of mad at today.
Uh-oh.
Because I understand that you're somehow involved in ice cream, and I thought we were friends, man.
Yeah. No, my adventures in ice cream. So Night Food. There's a company that makes sleep-friendly ice cream.
What is sleep-friendly ice cream?
Yeah, and so I've been helping them for the last few years. So the idea was this. So the guy who runs this company.
Tell me you didn't take like a pint of Baskin Robbins and just jam it full of melatonin. Please tell me you didn't do that.
Oh no, you know me better than that.
Okay, good. All right. Good.
No. There's no melatonin.
Thank God.
So the idea was this. So there's this guy who he was someone who snacked at night, I guess, and was reading about how, snacking at night is bad for you.
Sure.
And he's like, well, I wonder, so what snacks should I have at night? So he goes to the store and doesn't see anything. That's like, well, why isn't there a line of snacks for nighttime? That's when people are snacking.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I don't know, maybe I'll make something. And so he created this company that called Night Food, and made these like bars that you could sometimes find in stores that were the idea behind the product was if you're going to be the best nighttime snack maybe is no nighttime snack, but
sure,
if you're going to be doing it anyway, is there something that's better than just reaching for something that's unhealthy, because you don't want high fat, high sugar foods at night. And so he developed the first product here, and that helped kind of set the stage for what came next, which was the ice cream. And the idea is that most people eat ice cream at night, and ice cream is kind of like the one thing people want at night because it satisfies the craving.
Yep.
But it's actually not good at night because it's high fat, high sugar, and can sometimes have all kinds of other additives and stuff. It's like,
gives your body way too many things to do while you're trying to have it fall asleep.
Right. And so he's like, what if we could help make an ice cream that people would eat at night because that's when people want it, but it got out of the way of sleep? Like it didn't load you up with lots of fats and sugar, and didn't have like the sugar alcohols and stuff that could make you give you some upset stomach or anything that could keep you up in any way that wouldn't give you reflux or whatever. For most people, I mean, obviously you can't do anything for anybody, but
Sure.
for everybody. But that got out of the way. And he's like, so he asked me, hey, you know about sleep and nutrition stuff. Can you help me formulate this? Make sure we get the right ingredients, make sure that we're doing this right. And make sure we're not making claims we shouldn't be making. So he's like, I don't want this to be melatonin ice cream. Like this isn't ice cream we're selling to fix a sleep problem. This is ice cream for people who are going to eat ice cream at night anyway. Might as well give them something else to do. We're not trying to be a nutraceutical. We're not trying to be a supplement. It's just sleep ice cream that gets out of the way of good sleep. Sleep friendly is sort of the idea.
Sure.
And actually, as we were formulating it, there actually are some ingredients there that might be sleep promoting. Not again, this isn't it's not edible Ambien or anything. It's just ice cream. But the idea is like, okay, well, if it was going to be high, the idea is that it's high protein, high fiber, which helps satisfy the cravings, but lower on fat and sugar, but doesn't taste that way. That still tastes good because to satisfy that craving. And it turns out that when choosing ingredients, if we had a choice between multiple things to put in it, we would err on the side of the one that actually has some sleep data to support it. That at least it might be at least good for sleep or at least not harmful. So that was sort of the process, and they launched, and they're in a bunch of stores now all over. You can get them. You can get them online. They're growing. I think there was some announcement that there's some even like national chains are going to start picking it up, and it'll be interesting to see. I personally thought it was a great idea. I think, the best nighttime snack is no nighttime snack because your body probably doesn't need it. But if you're going to snack anyway, might as well have something that satisfies the craving but gets out of the way.
See, and this is an interesting conversation to have because, I mean, given the editorial that I just did about the guaranteed white noise machine, blah, garbage, and all of those things that are just irritants for me, I also want to get to you about what Chilina Kennedy just said a few minutes ago about her routine. But before we get to any of that, of course, I'm required now by the format of the show to ask you the inevitable question, how did you sleep last night?
I actually slept great last night. I mean,
good.
Yeah, I mean that's not unusual for me, but I did, and last night was a good night.
I've asked you that question like 40 times now, I think, and I think there's been maybe twice where you've had to cop to a bad night's sleep. So whatever it is you're doing is
and it happens. Yeah, like nobody sleeps perfectly every night, and I think that's an important message too. Like sometimes I have a bad night's sleep because I'm a human. It's just the difference is that. Like when I have a bad night of sleep, I sort of know what to do to keep one bad night from going to two. Like sometimes I get sick. Sometimes, something hurts or like it's too hot or it's too cold or something. And, it happens. Or I remember how many months ago was it like, oh, there's a fire a wildfire up the road. Remember that?
I remember that.
That wasn't the best night.
You were choking on smoke while we were doing the episode. I felt awful for making you finish the interview. But I mean, no, for someone like you, if you, the fact that you have the occasional bad night is almost reassuring in a way, like it's not like, the day that Anthony Fauci gets COVID, like all of the wisdom about masks and vaccines and stuff, that just takes a tumble,
But he's allowed to catch a cold too. Sometimes,
he absolutely is. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Like if you have the greatest diet in the world, it's okay to like have a pizza once.
Yeah.
You don't have, the thing about sleep is it's similar to diet where sleep doesn't have to be perfect to be perfectly fine.
Yep.
And
I have a friend in the nutrition world who used to talk about that exact scenario. He would talk about how, let's say you're eating five times a day. You're eating 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. Okay, great. So he says, now picture that volume of food. If you had to take that food and put it in a bucket. So there's that food in a bucket. Now, you got a whole week. You got 7 of these buckets full of food and dump them in the corner somewhere where you can see this massive pile of food that you've eaten over the course of a week. And it's all super healthy and all good and all blah, 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 blah. And in there, throw 3 or 4 slices of pizza. And get a visual in your head of how the 3 or 4 slices of pizza doesn't negate all of the other stuff that you're staring at. It's just something that's in there in the course of it. Just because you had 4 slices of pizza doesn't going to mean you're going to wake up 250 pounds heavier the next day. It's just, like big picture, you're fine.
Right.
Have some
It's
pizza,
context.
have some ice cream,
if
whatever
we
it
were,
ends up being
if
for
we
you.
were that fragile, evolution would have figured out a way around that a long time ago. The truth is, we're pretty adaptable. So yeah, I mean, bad nights sometimes happen. The difference is that I don't I have things that I do, but I don't have. I mean, people ask me well, what mattress do you sleep on? I wouldn't mind saying, but it's not because I think it's the best mattress in the world. It's just it works fine for me. But I could probably sleep on lots of different kinds of mattresses because I might not be as sensitive to it as other people may be, and that's okay.
Interesting. And this conversation as well, even about ice cream and pizza and all these things, I mean, it's instructive, right? Because it kind of gets into this conversation that I just had with Chilina, which flows through this whole thing of what the second season of this show is about. I mean, the first season was from people like you and Adrian Owen and Seema Khosla and Spencer Dawson and the rest of them. I'm learning as much as I can about sleep, so I've got a solid baseline of knowledge. I will never know as much. You could forget everything you've ever learned about sleep and you'll still know 10 times more than I do. But I've got a baseline. And so now it's go forth, and whether it's Chilina Kennedy this week or a couple of weeks from now, Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, or a couple weeks down the road, the guest list going forward is kind of interesting. Buckle in, it's going to be a fun ride. But they all have sleep hacks that they fall back on, and so now I'm going to go and try those things myself for a couple weeks and see what things make a difference. So knowing as I do now that there's not one answer that works for everybody, thank you very much, guaranteed sleep white noise machine people, I'm interested to see what different people's recommendations do for me, knowing that there's not one magic bullet. So we talk about what Chilina Kennedy talked about with this thing that she does about getting grounded, and it's almost like this meditative process that she goes through of closing her eyes and thinking about relaxing each body part individually and all that stuff that she does. From your perspective as sleep science guy, where's the science on that? Because not just that, but whether it's pillows, mattresses, lavender, blah, 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 all these different things that product-wise or process-wise seem to be focused around getting comfortable and peaceful. Where does all that rank in terms of its efficacy as a treatment for a sleep disorder?
So first I want to say that the description of that, I think, if I were going to design a wind down sort of mental exercise, I don't know that I could make a better one. I think, and I'm going to talk in a second about why all those elements are great. That aside, you bring up an interesting point about the difference between something that's relaxing and something that's sleep inducing. And a lot of people confuse the two, where sometimes something that's relaxing can be sleep inducing if the arousal that you're trying to relax from was the barrier to sleep. And in those cases, relaxing things are good. But the scientific data is pretty clear that relaxation is an important ingredient, but not the only ingredient. And there are a lot of people who do all kinds of relaxing things and it doesn't change their sleep at all. So the relaxation element is important, but not sleep. Relaxation and sleep are two very different things. So for example, there's a lot of things that you can do to relax. And if you did them, your sleep may not change at all. Because relaxation, maybe you weren't relaxed and now you're more relaxed, but you still have mental activity going on and you still have something else that's getting in the way of sleep, which is why relaxation on its own statistically does not seem to fix insomnia problems.
Is that also part of where people come at things like red wine? Oh, I have a glass of red wine before bed. It knocks me out because I get so relaxed. Well, no, hold on. That's a bad road to go down because it's going to mess with your sleep architecture.
Right. So people's perceptions of what the barrier is are sometimes incomplete. So you'll see this a lot in the supplement space, where things that are sold as sleep aids might be somewhat relaxing, but they might not statistically do anything to sleep, unless in your particular case that was the barrier. So if it is and it helps, great. If not, don't be too discouraged that might not have been the problem. Because there's all kinds of other things, like where you can be totally relaxed, get into bed, and your mind still won't slow down because it got trained to, because of the conditioned arousal and all that other stuff. So there's, with that caveat, that relaxation is not sleep induction. It's part of the process, but it's not the same thing. That said, relaxation is usually very important. There's also a big difference between relaxation and distraction. Distraction is a different technique, sometimes very helpful, but like watching TV is distracting, not relaxing.
Sure.
And relaxation is an active process. So this thing that you were describing that had a couple components to it. First of all, it had a detaching component. It had a mindfulness component. It had a progressive relaxation component, which is where you go through different areas of your body. And it also had an imagery component. Those are fantastic, separately and combined. So I'll go through each one. So first is the detaching. This is extremely important for people who are stuck in their day and are having trouble getting out of it into the night. And
ruminating over everything that happened all day long?
Exactly. And so having a process by which you can remove yourself from the day can help set you up for success later. I mean, it's silly, but it's sort of, there's a ritual element in it as well. And so it's like, if the ritual can be very powerful. There you can do things in a ritual that you can't do physically. So like, if you want to, so it's like lighting a candle and saying a prayer for somebody. I mean, there's the prayer itself that people may believe may have unique thing, but lighting the candle itself doesn't do anything to the person, but it symbolizes something for you, and that has power in and of itself. You can do a thing. You can't make yourself do a thing, but you can do the ritual, which can tap into that ability. So having the ritual of the detaching from the day actually has power in and of itself. So then you get the mindfulness component. And mindfulness is, I think, something that's very misunderstood. It could be a buzzword, but what mindfulness at its core is it's awareness. It's that there's so much going on in our own heads that we're not even paying attention to, but it can drive us. And what mindfulness is, it's at its core, it's being aware of what's going on. Like, where am I? And who else is in this mental room with me? And what are they saying? And what are they doing? Without even trying to change anything. It's just becoming aware. And that awareness has power. And then there's skills involved in terms of, once you become aware, you can start intervening on things you didn't even know were going on in the background, but until you became aware of them. But the mindfulness component of just of being in your own head, and actually, without judging, without trying to over control it at first, just becoming aware of where your mind is. There's actually all kinds of data on mindfulness and sleep, because a lot of people get into bed, their mind, they say their mind's racing, but they can't even really think about what they're thinking about. They don't really even know what's going on. It's outside their awareness. So gaining that awareness can be powerful. The next element is the progressive relaxation. So I don't know if anyone's talked about this on the show before. Has anyone talked about progressive muscle relaxation?
No,
okay.
Not a word so far.
Okay, so progressive muscle relaxation is a specific technique that was developed decades ago. I mean, what was it, in the 30s, the 50s? I don't know, before my time. And
not necessarily before mine, though. Thanks for pointing that out.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So what progressive muscle relaxation is at its core, and what you're talking about is a variation of it, which is good, but what the core progressive muscle relaxation is you go through each muscle group, and you start with your toes, your right toes, and then your left toes, and your right calf, and your left calf, and then you go through each muscle group in your body, and you tighten it, and then you relax it, and then you tighten it, and then you relax it. then you move on to the next muscle group. And if you're doing this by the book, what you would do is when you tighten it as much as you can, like to discomfort. And you want to feel the tightness. Feel how that tightness in those muscles radiates around your whole body. Feel what those muscles feel like when they're tight, and then you relax them. And then you feel the relaxation. Feel what those muscles feel like relaxed. Feel the relaxation like radiating throughout your body, and how that's different from the tension. And then you tense it again. You're supposed to always do it twice if you're doing it by the book, because then you're reintroducing that contrast. Then you go through. It takes a while, actually. And it's a great exercise because your mind is actually very active if you're doing it properly. It's actually a mental exercise as well, because you're focusing on the muscles and you're tightening them, and then you're relaxing them, and then you're feeling the thing, and you're doing all. It's very mentally active. So by the end of this, if you're doing a by the book progressive muscle relaxation, it could take 20, 30 minutes to get through a whole body. And at the end of it, you are exhausted. You've just tensed every muscle in your body, relaxed every muscle in your body, and mentally you've gone through this whole exercise. So at the end of it, you haven't thought about your worries or fears or the next day or your to-do list for the last half an hour. You've had something else to do that has contributed to this whole body relaxation. And it's actually a very powerful relaxation technique. It's like a sledgehammer for relaxation. It takes a lot of effort, even takes some practice to get it right. But and you can look for progressive muscle relaxation scripts online and stuff. Some of them are abbreviated because nobody really wants to do the whole thing.
Sure.
But it can be very powerful.
It's funny that you bring this up because we do something similar with my now almost 3-year-old. We've started her on this, and we've been doing it for a few months now. And it's something that we picked up from this partnership now that Sesame Street has with Headspace, the meditation app.
Yeah.
Where I think, if I remember the episode correctly, and it's just like a short little thing that shows up as part of the episode, where Andy, the British guy from Headspace that walks you through all these different things, he shows up with Grover, and he teaches Grover how to do an exercise called Good Night Body. And it's the same thing. They don't get as far into the tensing of the muscles and the relaxation, but what he teaches Grover, and Grover takes a few minutes to learn things.
But the way better I could do.
They do the toes, and they do then the feet, and then they do the legs and the calves, and then and he works his way all the way up, and then by the time it's over, you've said goodnight to your body and you're ready for bed. Sesame Street kind of came up with the 3-year-old version of what you're describing.
Yeah.
But it's better to get them started on that stuff early,
Exactly.
and then it's easier to advance their knowledge of it and then get into the tensing and relaxing stuff when they're old enough to understand what's going on.
Exactly. So this whole idea, that's where the progressive part of it comes in. You start one and you move your way through. When you do it with the muscle relaxation, it also teaches you what your muscles feel like when they're tense and relaxed. Because a lot of people tense up and they walk around the day with all this tension and they get headaches and stuff. But when they get used to feeling what it feels like, oh, my shoulders are up here.
The most common one, and the one that I catch myself doing all the time, and if you're sitting either watching or listening to this right now, without stopping and taking credit for it in advance, is your tongue pressed against the roof of your mouth right now?
Right.
Probably
that's a good
yes.
One. That's
because
a good
most
one.
people do that most of the time, and that's tension inducing. It's not a whole ton of tension because it's just your tongue against the roof of your mouth. But think about it for a second. Your tongue doesn't naturally press against the roof of your mouth. That's you doing something,
Yep.
And if you just, sometimes for me, that's enough. If I stop and I go, oh, that's happening, and then I just let it fall.
Exactly. And
That's
it
a
teaches
step
you to start
sometime.
noticing those things. You have the tongue. You have jaw is another one. People tighten a lot. The where's your hand? Is it in a fist or is it open? Are your forehead muscles relaxed? So all these things we carry around with us. So yeah, this progressive. So when you do it without tensing, relaxing, sometimes I'll call that a body scan, where you're at least noticing what's happening. And it's a mindfulness exercise where you're just noticing what's happening there, and you relax it if you want to. So it's a great exercise. There's tons of data. It's probably, my guess is it's the most scientifically supported relaxation technique out there. And actually, a lot of the behavioral treatments for insomnia came out of the people doing research on some of these back in the day. So that element of it is great because it takes you through your whole body and it helps you find where that tension was. And then the other element is the imagery. Like the visualized imagery, the relaxing imagery, there's actually good data on imagery as well. And it's especially really good for people who have trouble getting, who are sort of stuck in their body. So this is sort of a good rule of thumb I use in my clinic is if you've got somebody who's stuck in their head, get them into their body, like with a muscle relaxation exercise or something, because you can talk yourself in or out of any sort of meditation thing you're doing. If you're so in your head that you're out of control and you can't control what's going on in your head, a meditation exercise off the bat, maybe you're not ready for, or you're not going to be, you're going to hold yourself up to a higher standard than you'll be able to reach. But get into your body, do stretches. Like, but I don't want to. It's like, well, that's something you can't control what's going on up here, but you can control what's going on down here. Do yoga, do a breathing exercise, do a muscle relaxation. If you're someone who's sort of stuck in your body and you're holding tension or you're uncomfortable and you want to relax, get into your mind. And when you're doing a visual imagery, what will happen is that feeds back through your body. It slows down your breathing. It improves gas exchange. It causes endorphin release. All these other things you can't consciously do, but you can do it through that. Just like the ritual, the power of the ritual. It taps into a physical capability you have. It's not fake. It's just you don't have conscious control over it. But it doesn't mean you have no control. And the imagery is a way of gaining control over aspects of your body you can't consciously control. But you can do it through the imagery. You will notice if you do it right, your breathing slows, your heart rate will slow, your muscles will relax, things like that. So that's why I think it's a great combination of the detaching, the mindfulness, the progressive physical relaxation, and the imagery for the mental.
So many times when people come up with things that they do in their life, on a day-to-day basis, they just kind of do them because they work for them. But I'm going to make sure that Chilina sees this moment in our conversation, because there's this magical moment of finding out that a thing that you stumbled on that works for you is actually supported by science. I'm sure she'll be gratified to find that out. And listen, I'm always gratified when you've got time to pop into the show and say hello. It's a treat every time, and I'm looking forward to, as different people give me their hacks, bouncing stuff off of you to get the science behind why they do or don't work for various people. So, Michael, thank you again.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Anytime.
Let's go have ice cream. Wow, you're still here? Hey, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for being part of episode number 2 of season number 2 of the Snooze Button podcast. And we're on YouTube now. We're all over the place. So thanks. You go to our website at thesnoozebutton.com. You'll find all the ways to watch and listen. You'll find ways to rate, review, support the show. You get the entire archive of all the 50 some odd episodes that came before this one, and places as well to let us know what you think of what we're doing and how we could do it just a little bit better. Next week on the show, the art of the nap. Oh, I'm so excited about next week's episode. And Dr. Chris Winter will be here as well on next week's show. Then the week after, Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett will be here to answer the question, how do you fall asleep the night before you put a president on trial? Back here next week for more. My name's Neil Headley, and till then, hey, get some sleep, would you?